Hey everybody, I'm your host Paloma Collins on Mental Health 411, and on this week's episode, we have a special guest to kick off June 2021 Pride, and we're going to have a special conversation with Karari. I'm going to be bringing her on, but just before I do that, I just want to again remind you that Mental Health 411 is for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you are seeking help, always seek a professional. Okay, so I am going to be bringing Karari in 1 second. So everybody please welcome Karari to Mental Health 411. Hi, Karari.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. It's just been so long since I've seen you. So it's been more than 10 years now. So it's just so nice to share space with you again and to be here and talk about something that I love to talk about.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time. And so again, I just want to point out, it's like so many festivities and so much happening, hopefully this year. I mean, we've been in quarantine, and so we've done our best to celebrate. And so maybe this year we're going to see more of it. And one of the things I wanted to do is just, bring you specifically on here to have conversations about, just knowing and educating those out there that are listening about transitioning, specifically maybe with youth, an individual that might be asking themselves questions. We've been in quarantine for a very long time. I think it's been over a year, right? Almost a year and a half. And I think that what I'm seeing so much of right now are individuals coming and asking me, about resources, questioning parents, children. I feel like so many people had so much time to self-reflect and to really think about their lives from a different point of view. And we're all kind of in this mentality of like, it's either now or never kind of thing. Like, I want to live my life and I want to be who I really am, my true self. I could be here now and then tomorrow not be here. And so it's like from that frame that we're going to have this conversation of really helping those out there, maybe providing some information that they might not be aware of. And I just want to start off by saying, again, thank you for being here and for sharing whatever it is that you're comfortable with sharing. And maybe we can start off by knowing a little bit about you. So please, Karari, let us know who you are and what you do for the community.
So my name is, I'm Karari. My pronouns are she, her. I am a race and gender equity consultant with Praxis Group. And what we do is we do a lot of advocacy work and working with agencies, corporations, nonprofits to create policies and procedures and welcoming environment for all people who are marginalized. And that is the work I do. But also I am a trans mom. I have trans children that I kind of mentor and mother and help them navigate the wild and crazy world of transitioning. And so that's a little bit what I do. I think I want to be a source of information, a source of inspiration. I want to help people navigate what it means to be trans and understand transness a little bit better, since it's still very much, even though it's very much a hot topic in the news, even though it's a hot topic with conservatives and liberals alike, transness is not really that complicated. Transness isn't all that different from a lot of people's experiences. But at the same time, we want to also center the nuances of transness. And yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
And so you mentioned trans children and that you're a trans mother. Can you explain that a little bit for those listeners who might not understand those terms and what that means?
Yeah. So in general, queer people or LGBT people are often rejected by our families. Our families often do not accept us, or they push us out, or sometimes we're homeless because of it. And so what we do as a community is we create family units, right? I don't know if people have watched Pose, and you can see in the TV show how the characters create a family, they live together and that sort of thing. I don't live with my children, but I do function the same way. As a trans mother, I help other trans youth or young trans people navigate their transition. I show them the ropes. I help them navigate getting hormones, accessing surgeries, finding therapists, all that kind of stuff. And so I help them based on my own experiences of transness. And this is not to say that, of course, I replace their mother, like their biological mothers or the mothers that raised them. It's simply that I allow them the opportunity to kind of grow in their transness with them, and I hold their hand throughout the entire process. I'm essentially a doula to them as they give birth to themselves.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I think that as you point that out, one thing that I do want to mention is that, of course, you do this and you do it with just bringing in resources from community, from the city, whatever it is around that you are aware of. But there might be people out there saying, "Oh, I'm gonna, look for a mother, someone to guide me." But what are some things to look out for, like some red flags, or just some things that, like, again, it's really about finding the right person that you connect with. And it's like any other thing, like when you go to see a therapist, you might not connect with that person, or a doctor, a dentist. It's like, you kind of like look around, do a little bit of interviewing and understanding. So what kind of, I don't know, guidance can you provide to our listeners when it comes to that?
Yeah, so I think I've said this before, right? That not every trans mom needs to be not every trans woman needs to be a trans mom, just like
Yeah.
not every cis woman needs to be a mother, right? And
Right.
so there's obviously you can't just trust everyone. It's like people sometimes want to take advantage of people, people who are vulnerable. When you're transitioning, you are in a place of vulnerability, and so it's important for you to kind of vet the people that you are sharing community with. This is not to say that people are out to get you, right? This is not to say that trans community is trying to take advantage of people who are early transitioning, but it's to say that, sometimes, hurt people. And so
Yes.
it's important for us to be able to acknowledge that. And so it really is, the great thing about now is that because of social media, you really can connect with lots of different people. So it's about reaching out to the people who just kind of fill your spirit with something, the women who are doing, or even the men, right, trans men, or the people, non-binary people who are doing the work that you like to see yourself do. It's about connecting with people who have similar backgrounds to you. It's about connecting with people who maybe even sometimes look the way you would like to look, right?
Mhm.
And so reaching out to them, connecting with them is a way to really navigate your own transition and find your community. Because really, unlike our biological families or the families we were raised, we don't get to choose those families. But as queer and trans people, we actually get to choose our families, and we get to find the siblings, the sisters, the brothers, the mothers, the fathers, the parents that really fill our soul the way we need to. And so as someone is looking for their chosen family, it's about asking, like, what is it that you want? What kind of support are you looking for? Because some of us, we had chosen family when we were young, and it was really just like these siblings that we would go clubbing with, right?
Mhm.
Then there's other times in our lives we're now looking for people who are going to be our co-parents, people to raise children with, people to serve as surrogates, etc. So it's like we're always navigating that like chosen family, and chosen family changes over time. And so it's okay for us to kind of really question, what do I need now? What would fill my soul now? What would make me feel whole now? And then pursuing that.
And saying to yourself, does this other person have and share the same values? And are they able to provide me and fulfill me when it comes to those like listed needs, right? And
Mhm.
of course, navigating through that. I think, another question that has come up is a lot of parents ask themselves, like, how can I be supportive if they have a child, a minor, right, who is going through this process? What guidance can you give them?
Yeah, one of my friends, she told me that the child that she is fostering,
Mhm.
came out to her as trans, and the child uses he, him, she, her, they, them pronouns kind of fluidly. It depends on the day, depends on how they feel. And she reached out to me and asked me, like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm doing this right." And it was like,
Mhm.
and she was telling me how she's very supportive, and she allows the child to decide what they're going to wear, allows them to pick their name depending on the day. And so I told her, like, you're doing great already. I think for many parents, it's important for you to let your child know that you love them for who they are now, and that you will love them for whoever it is that they will be tomorrow and the day after that. And so I think it's often hard for parents to really allow that fluidity, because in many ways, I think the harm that my parents did to me, and the reason why it was so hard for them, was that they projected a life onto me, right? They thought I was going to be their firstborn. I was named after my dad. I was going to marry a woman, have my children, and I was going to do all these things that they already were expecting of me. But
Mhm.
that's not who I was. That's not who I was going to become. And it's that discrepancy between who they were hoping I would be versus who I am that prevents them from really truly loving their child, right? And so I think it's about parents letting go of any and all expectations, because a child is in a state of flux, right? You can't put limits on someone who's still growing in the same way that it's like you have to change the pot, right? As the flower is growing, you can't leave them in this small confined space. And so it's important for parents to be aware of this and to allow that expression and to exploration of a child. Because many times, I mean, as an adult, I didn't know where I was going. As an adult, I wasn't really fully aware of my own transition or how it was happening. I just knew that certain things made me feel me, and I kept pursuing those things. So I can only imagine as a child that it's just as confusing, because now you have, the adults, you have people who are bullies, you have people who are, jerks to you, and they say things, and you're absorbing all these messages, and so I can only imagine how hard it is for a child who's transitioning. But if a parent is willing and supportive and allowing that child to explore and saying, you can explore this, you can do that, you can wear this, and I'm going to love you, whether you're in pants or a skirt, whether you have short hair or long hair, I'm going to love you today and forever, I think will be something that is really truly healing, and it makes them feel safe in their exploration.
Definitely. I think that you hit something, a great point is that it's so important for children to have support from their parents, because that's our base and that's where we build our strength, right? When for some, just by natural cause, when we have parents that are supportive and we have parents that are there for us, saying to us like, you can do it, and cheering us on, it has us this sense, right, of security, and we go out into the world believing and thinking like, we got this and we're going to make things happen. But when you have parents that are not supportive and who are, almost being part of the bullies, of, the non-acceptance and the questioning at school and in society, it makes a child feel unwhole and just so insecure. And that's, I think, sometimes when they become older, there's a lack of always or sometimes feeling like I'm not making the right choices, questioning themselves, connecting with people that are not always like the safest or that have like the best interest in their lives, right? It always comes down to parenting and being supportive.
Yeah, I think the fact that, so when I came out to my parents, my dad was supportive and my mom wasn't, and I think that created that trauma, right? That the love that my mom had for me or that my parents had for me was conditional. That it wasn't actually like, I'll love you no matter what. That we want to believe as children that our parents are going to love us no matter what, and so it did stymie my transition. I remember thinking as early as like 10 years ago, right? And I didn't start transition until maybe 36, I'm gonna be 37. So it's been about 7 years since I've started my transition.
Mhm.
Wow, it's been so long. Um, and so I remember thinking like, oh, I could never be a trans woman, because what would I say to my parents? How would I explain that to my parents? And so it was that fear, that I didn't know what I was doing, that I was this fear that they weren't going to accept me anymore. It's like they already didn't accept me for one thing, but at least they didn't kick me out. At least they didn't, stop talking to me. But this might be too much, right? And so, yeah, many times parents who aren't supportive really create this harm, and it makes us feel like we aren't whole, and it makes us afraid to explore. It makes us afraid to pursue who we truly are. And I think a lot of my relationships kind of come from that trauma, because I found people who I thought were supportive of me, but they also had their own, restrictive vision of who I was supposed to be. And if I didn't fit in those parameters, then somehow they would love me less and remind me that they would love me less. And so then I would, try to adjust accordingly. I know one of my exes was was very adamant about me cutting my hair, because he said that my hair was even longer than his mother's and it was disgusting. And so this was, before I transitioned, obviously. And so him putting that like parameter of like, I will only love you if you look like a certain way, made me want to do it, because I didn't feel that support anywhere else. So it's like, oh, my parents don't love me for me, and this person says he loves me, so maybe I should just cut my hair. Thankfully, I didn't. Thankfully, like, I was strong enough to end that relationship eventually. But I think that parents rejecting their children early on really puts them on a course that they're going to have to adjust later in life through therapy, through friends, through healing, right? And parents could prevent a lot of those things by simply being supportive, by simply allowing the child to exist as they naturally exist.
Definitely. And I think another thing too is also for parents is that it's a time to really open up to community resources. It's a time to open up to the medical doctors, to really establish a group of people that can come into your life and guide, right? Guide the parents and educate the parents as they go through the process. And it's so important, I think, that one thing is, I don't think that we talk enough about also is that parents also go to therapy so that they are able to understand and to process whatever grief they're going through, because they also go through the grieving process. And so that they're able to go through that and be there completely present for their child, because that is an important key to making sure that that child is successful as much as possible, right? In every aspect of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I really hate the narrative that parents are grieving, because it's like, your child isn't dead, right? And like I said before, it's like, what you're really grieving is the projection that you had.
That you had of what your child was supposed to be. Yeah. And I
So,
think that's the piece. The piece is understanding the difference between that.
mhm,
And yeah, you're grieving that part, but that part really came from you and your beliefs and what you wanted. But truly, it's not about the child. And I think that parents learn that, but they learn it through psychoeducation, through therapy.
mhm. And yeah, parents need to do that work on their own, right? Your child does not need to be aware of your grieving because of your projections of
No,
what your child was supposed to be. And so it's like, parents, it's important for y'all to really do that work apart from your child. Don't put
apart.
that labor.
No.
Because oftentimes that's what parents do. They're like, well, I feel like my son died. And it's like, but your son didn't die. I'm still
Mhm.
here. I'm just different. I look different. I'm living my life differently from what you thought I was going to live my life as. And I think it does create that harm, because suddenly now I'm failing to meet the
Yes.
vision of me that you have.
Mhm.
And now I'm
Mhm.
always playing catch up with your love.
Mhm. And I think that one of the mistakes that many parents make is that they go through that process exactly like you said with their child, as if the child is a therapist, as if the child is going to help them understand. And it doesn't work that way. It's very complicated because the child is going through so much. That person, that individual, even as an adult, you're going through so much that 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 layer of it, that layer of your parents grieving who they believe that you were supposed to be, does not belong to you. It's really about them. And so one of the things is it's so important that I always talk to parents is they need to be in therapy so that they're able to understand that piece, and that they're able to be again so present there for their child, not for themselves and what they're going through. Yeah.
Exactly. For sure. I think it's parents struggle with that. I think parents are
Mhm.
human, right? All of us are human. And as a trans mother, I have to also be aware of how my traumas are manifesting, as I am also like helping these young trans people navigate their identities. I think one example is, I have like trauma with cutting my hair. When I was in high school, I think senior year, I started growing out my hair. And then I was like, my dad kept trying to get me to go to get my hair cut. And I kept like, nah, 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 nah. Eventually they tricked me and they were like, oh, we're going to go here. And then we were going to the barber shop, and so they sat me down. And so I'm a teenager,
Okay.
and I'm also like quiet. I'm kind of like I've always been the good child, right? The one who just like obeyed my parents and didn't cause problems. I
Mhm.
wanted to be invisible. I wanted to like, or I always had that fear that they weren't going to love me when they found out the secret about me. And so I always did my best to be the best child. And I went and I cut my hair, or they cut my hair. And so I have that trauma with like getting my hair cut. And so my daughter likes her hair short. And to me, that triggers this kind of like almost like a trauma response, like I'm the
Mhm.
one getting my hair cut. And so
Yes.
when he talks to me about like, oh, I'm gonna cut my hair, it's always like, are you sure, girl? Because like
Like, you feel
I
it
know,
here. Like, you're
yeah,
like, "No, no."
yeah. And that's just like me,
Yes.
projecting onto my trans daughter. And so I can only imagine what it's like for a parent who gave birth to this child or who raised this child, um, having a child do things that they themselves were punished for, right? And I think that's
Mhm.
very particular for like our community as like a Mexican. I think my parents seeing me be much more freer than they were, I'm
Yes.
sure elicits a fear response in them. Because again, my mom came from a very religious, very conservative, like small town in Mexico, in Michoacan, very tightly knit family. And so for her to see me, and my siblings be very like loose with family, right? My brother joined a fraternity. Refers to like his frat brothers as brothers. My sister used to work at a school and used to work at a daycare, so she would call those her children. And then I
Mhm.
have my children, and so for us to be so loosey goosey with the label of
With these
family,
labels
it
and
kind of
yeah.
throws my parents off, right? And I think it is this trauma response of like, no, your family is this, and that she wants to
Mhm.
control it. Um, and so it's important for parents to really kind of navigate how those traumas get triggered as your child is exploring, as your child is doing things that either you weren't able to do or things that you were told no one should be able to do.
Mhm. Or just simply they didn't know, they were never exposed, and they just don't know about a lot of things, and I definitely think that, we continue to educate and psychoeducate our parents throughout life, right? And I think one of the things I think about is that I'm hoping that conversations like this and the work that you're doing and just the work that I try to do with my families is that one day we can just live and not have these concerns or worries, and that it's just going to be a place where people can live and just be who they are and who they want to be. And that's why these conversations are so important. And just thinking about labels and talking about labels. And I think there's all right now, oh, there's been for a while, like so much conversation about labels and pronouns, and I think so many people don't get it or don't understand, and especially I think in our culture, it's like with with the Latinx, like so many people are like Latinx women, Latinx, and I don't know, like for example, for me, it's very important for me as I identify as a gay queer woman that I am feminine and I'm ultra femme, and I want to be she, her, ella, and that's important for me.
Mm.
How do you feel? How do you feel about pronouns, and what do you think about
I
that?
Yeah, like I think pronouns are incredibly important, right? Especially for trans. I think pronouns are important for all of us.
Mhm,
And a lot of times conservatives like to believe or like to project that, oh, pronouns are just this new thing that happened. But it's like you will learn that people's pronouns matter when you call a woman he, like a cis woman
mhm,
he, or
mhm.
if you try to she a man. I remember like how quickly like straight men get offended when I'm like, oh girl, stop. It's like I'm not a girl. Like so it's
Right.
like, okay, obviously gender matters. Gender matters to you. So therefore you should also um, respect trans people's pronouns, you should respect queer people's pronouns, and allow respect our autonomy in deciding what our gender and pronouns mean to us, right? I think sometimes we get people who are like, well, dude is gender neutral. I'm like, I
Mm,
think girl is gender neutral, but obviously you take it personal. If I'm like, ooh, girl, no, girl.
mhm,
Um, and so I think, yeah, it's like, it's important for us to take ownership of what feels good for us, right? And so for you, she, her, womanhood feels good in the same way that for me, she, her feels good as well. Like as a trans person, and as a, you know, trans woman, as a trans femme, for me, femininity and womanhood is just something that resonates with me. It's resonated with me since I was a child, and before I even understood what it truly meant. And so I'm honoring that femininity, that womanhood within me when I use she, her pronouns, when I change my name, when I present the way I do. And so it's like allowing people that autonomy to decide what their pronouns mean for them. And I don't think it's very hard. I know it's difficult for us when we're using pronouns like they, them, or when we're using pronouns that are not as common, but it's about
Mhm.
that respect that we have for others. In the same way that
Exactly.
we learn to pronounce people's names,
Mhm.
we need to learn to pronounce people's pronouns. And also, when we look at someone, we don't know their name. So we shouldn't
Mhm.
assume their pronouns either. And it's okay for
Mhm.
us to ask pronouns in the same way that we ask for someone's name so that we know how to respectfully refer to them as.
Yeah, completely true. Tell us a little bit more about the work that you do. Tell us a little bit about the foundation or organization that you work with and what it's about.
So Praxis Group is a consulting firm. We work with nonprofits, we work with corporations, companies, businesses who are looking to create more equitable, like equitable practices, equitable procedures, creating cultures of inclusion. And so we focus a lot of our work on creating cultures of accountability, right? Oftentimes in the workplace, we believe that we're not supposed to bring our full selves because we're not going to be accepted. So it's like for queer people, for trans people, for people of color, oftentimes we have to create this professional persona that we go to work as. And so we're leaving a part of ourselves behind. And so we believe that we deserve to bring our full selves to work. We deserve to be our full selves always and not have to compartmentalize. But in order to do that, we do have to create a safer environment for people to be able to be freely themselves. Because what good does it do if I want to go and present as myself and be my full self when at work I'm dead named, I'm misgendered,
Mhm.
company, like, como se dice, like dress codes are
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
applicable to trans
Yeah.
people sometimes, right? There's like a male and female dress code, but what about for non-binary folks? Where do we fit in? Where do we
Mhm.
go? And so it's about like, how can you expect people to come in as their full selves while not creating the policies and procedures that protect them in order to be themselves? And so that's what we do. And when we come in, we help them create that the culture of accountability. We
Mhm.
help them create this culture of inclusivity in their workspace. And oftentimes it involves having direct conversations about like white supremacy, cis supremacy, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny. And so when we're having these conversations, candid conversations, it is difficult. It is often, there are people who are pushing back, right? But we believe that we're not supposed to coddle the people who are blocking progress, right? It's about a business, an organization saying, we believe in anti-racism and we're going to implement it on all levels of our business, of our organization. We believe in anti-homophobia, anti-transphobia, anti-misogyny. And so we're going to center those values in everything that we do. And if the employee does not believe in these values, then they can often self-select themselves out of that business, right? And
Mhm.
it's not about making it kind of like, oh, colorblind, or we accept everyone here, all lives matter type of thing. It's like, no, we want you to make um, that clear distinction and saying like, no, we value and center the lives of marginalized people, and our business will not be a space for any sort of like hatred or oppression. And it's often hard. It really is, because we encounter many people who believe all lives matter, who believe that you can be racist against white people, that who believe that, you know, like homophobia is a choice, or I mean that queerness is a choice,
Mhm.
transness is a choice. They believe that English is the only language that we should all speak. And so there's really people who believe this wholeheartedly, and so it's our job to kind of push back and be like, well, that's not necessarily the case. That's not necessarily true for everyone. And we're going to center people who are marginalized and oppressed in their workspace. And it's been great. I really enjoy the work that I do. It's been a very wild ride, honestly. Like, it's just to be able to see companies grow, and also, of course, since the George Floyd murder,
Yeah.
interest in anti-racism has gained traction. And so we often do workshops centering on anti-racism, while still, since most of us are trans and queer, we also talk about that queer and transness and how that intersects with anti-racism work.
And is this only in the Chicago area, or where can people find more information about these services? Is it throughout the United States, abroad? Where
So
is it available?
yeah, so we're centered in Chicago. So all of our facilitators and our consultants are in Chicago. However, because of the pandemic, right, we now are able to be anywhere. And so we do most of our current work has been on Zoom or on video chats and video facilitating. But it's, again, it could be anywhere at this point. We do work with some businesses who have like employees throughout the Midwest. And so Praxis Group has been doing with a lot of different agencies and organizations, not just in Chicago, but all throughout the Midwest. And we're definitely open to exploring beyond just Chicago and the Midwest. Right now the pandemic just kind of functioned as a way that now we can all be accessing these services beyond just the confines of where we live, right? I think hopefully things that we've learned through this pandemic is that we're not limited to where our bodies physically are manifesting or physically embodied, right? I think you and I are having this conversation. We live across the country. And the fact that we can do this says so much, right? The fact that people want this kind of content says a lot about the fact that we don't need to be restricted to where we live, but that this content and this information can exist beyond boundaries. I know for me, like, social media has just been this great tool of creating family and friends and colleagues and community members who live not only across the country, but across the world. And so the work can exist beyond it. I think there's limitations, of course. I think our work is contextualized in the US American understanding of race and gender and sexuality, whereas I think it wouldn't be as easy to export this to, say, West Africa, or even export it to Europe or export it to Latin America, because, again, our experiences with racism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny are closely related to the US American experience.
So definitely in the United States, that's where the services are accessible. And I think that I have the banner here, but maybe if you're able to tell us about Instagram or where people can reach out for more information, that would be very helpful for those that are just listening and not watching.
Yeah, so Praxis Shy is our Instagram handle, and also it's praxisshy.com if somebody wants to visit our website and see all the different sorts of workshops and facilitation that we provide for different businesses and nonprofits. Also includes our list of so many different organizations. I've worked with Facebook. I've worked with the local history museum here in Chicago. I've worked with a few conferences throughout the country as well. And so all those things are listed on our website at praxisshy.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at praxisshy.
Thank you. Thank you for that information. Very, very helpful for anyone out there that wants to reach out to Karari. Please, I will be leaving the information, and please reach out. Please follow Praxis Shy. Karari, thank you so much for coming in today and having this conversation with me. I really do appreciate your time. And to everyone out there, any questions that come about, please reach out to me on Instagram at Paloma Therapy, and I will surely forward those questions over to Karari. Or you can also follow Karari on Instagram at where are you located on Instagram?
It's Karari Kwe, Kararikue.
There you go, everybody. Thank you so much for listening out there. I am your host, Paloma Collins, for Mental Health 411, and I will talk to you all next time. Thank you. Bye.